Anyone want to ask a question? Mr. English, would you like to say something?
I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I did some of the preliminary work on getting this wetland classified as jurisdictional. Went through a very, kind of a pretty involved process to do that with Department of State Lands and the Corps of Engineers. But at any rate, I just see a lot of potential for this wetland. What I've been listening to, from Ryan and Eugene is it has a lot of values, not just fish, but for wetland values, for filtration, for providing cold water, for wildlife habitat, a lot of different things. But what I see here is you've got a unique opportunity, both biologically and from a community perspective, to try and work out something with this person or this organization that's trying to develop for a park. This would be a mobile home park, not for a natural history park.
RV park.
Or an RV park. So I really do see there's a lot of potential here. Be happy to, if there's a little core group here to try and work out some ideas, I'd be happy to work with them. Because I do see it's valuable for a lot of reasons. I think there's a lot of potential for, Eugene is pointing out some ways for restoration. It's a diamond in the rough. You've got the major source of water is what drives that wetland. And you've got a very unique source of water. And that water, if managed correctly, can provide a wonderful wetland. It's got some problems, but it's not terrible. It's doable.
Right.
But I see the way to make this happen is to find out, for example, if you said to this developer, what is it going to cost you to do the permitting, to do the design, to fill that wetland in, even if it's permitted? Why not just let this group have this particular piece of property and let them take it from there and develop it as a wonderful source of community pride and a wonderful wetland? And I think that if you present those options, you certainly have a lot of interest in the community to do this.
Yeah, this is great.
And I think if this person, this developer, has an idea of getting some good public relations, doing the right thing in the community, this would be a great opportunity for them as well.
I agree with you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a question or want to say something? I have a question. So where is the actual source of this water is? Like, you could see it before the fire, and then you could certainly see it after the fire. It looked like a little spring or a little seep coming out right there at the corner of the house. I guess it would be the south side of the house. But I was wondering, is it really a spring, or you were just talking, Eugene, maybe it's a truncated, it should go much further up the hill, so to speak, and now it's just coming out of the ground right there, and it's not really a spring, per se.
I don't know. That was part of why I went back and was kind of using Google Earth. I was trying to figure out if, like, upstream here, if there were potentially hydraulic connections. And we don't really know. I didn't do enough investigation myself to see what truly is under the house, if the water's just coming from the ground there, or if it's actually coming out of some sort of structure under there. But when I did work for RVCOG, one of the things we did was try to investigate storm drain connections, and we'd have these storm drains that flow into Bear Creek that would provide cold water year round, and we'd go, well, it's coming from somewhere, and we got to figure out. And a lot of times we found that there were just springs that during development, like underneath the Medford courthouse, there's a huge spring under there, and it's puking out a lot of water, but it's in pipes all the way under the city until it reaches Bear Creek. So could this wetland be fed by something, coming down there? Possibly, but the evidence that there's so many other wetlands along the same line, basically along the whole front of Phoenix and seeps, and actually some of them are pretty substantial in the amount of water they produce, it indicates to me that it's probably more geologic, that there's water coming down, it's just perching on a hard rock layer, and that's where it's emerging. Now, historically, someone may have dug down to access it, but it may have already just been there naturally, and they just worked with it too. So,
Yeah.
The bottom line is we've got a year-round perennial cold water source there. It may not be putting out a lot of volume, but it's important, because every little drop counts in mid-Bear Creek, like you heard from Ryan.
That's cool. And then would it be possible if something changed Because I thought the water went from the spring down Bear Creek that way, but you were just saying that it went more north.
North.
But there's a culvert that goes under, and Wanda went and took a photo or a video of that.
Yeah, there's an overflow culvert. You can kind of almost see the green.
Uh-huh.
Comes in somewhere in here.
Yep.
We did this planting project when I worked for RV Cog, and those trees, you guys probably knew, a lot of them had gotten pretty big before the fire. And the blackberry really hadn't had a chance to come back with a lot of vigor there, so I'm kind of surprised that those trees took it as hard as they did. To me, it suggested that the importance is you need to have extent. Like, it's not enough to just have one little patch of restored environment. You need to have, the bigger it is, the more durable it is. So a small place like that, if blackberry was burning to the side, over here, just the heat was too much. Needed to be more extent. But anyway, after the fire, I worked with volunteers to seed and straw mulch this whole area down here by Blue Heron. And I was in that pocket quite a bit. In fact, we found a handgun in there. One of the guys the kids that was cleaning up was like, "What do I do with this?" We called the cops and they came right down. They knew all about it. They're like, "Oh yeah, we chased a guy in here with that thing." So anyway, it was a swamp in there, and there's several channels in there, and it's definitely perennial water. So it suggests a connection here. It's also connected to whatever water is emerging over here that's kind of feeding those beaver wetlands and stuff as well.
But the culvert that goes into Bear Creek that way, like, could that be opened up and could fish actually come back up into there?
Well, I think that culvert is designed to be the overflow. Like, it kind of, there's almost like a secondary berm. You can kind of see it in that one picture that I had of the base of the wetland. You can see there's almost like a sub berm here.
Correct.
So it's kind of designed to stop in case it fills up, that it can't just completely spill out with velocity this way.
And this is one of the things that we're trying to push some best management practices for stormwater swells or bioswells. Not getting a whole lot of traction with some of the county and city planning boards, but right now you have all new development has to have a stormwater detention on site. What is most often the case is they're essentially encroaching then within the 50-foot protection setback, the riparian setback, and saying, hey, this is now our stormwater swell in here. We just had a major one built up on Larson Creek, actually above North Phoenix Road. It's great to have the stormwater detention, but you're right next to the creek, and there are easily ways for fish to get in there, and then as that water recedes, them get trapped in there. So it's like sometimes we might not. It depends on how it's designed. So
yeah, and those features are more beneficial the further back in the floodplain they are, because again, like you get back to the drier transition. That's where sort of there's the most need for those sort of wetland habitats and those connections for wildlife and for keeping the extent of the floodplain. So we shouldn't allow development to happen, to sort of like, well, let's double up and use the riparian area as our filtration zone too. It's like, let's try not to do that. But this wetland, Scott had made the point when we were talking before this meeting that being a jurisdictional wetland, you can just dump stormwater in here.
You cannot, right.
But you could treat it. There are ways to do, pre-treatment to that and potentially use it. Or, in time, maybe we'll find a design that actually works with this area. I mean, my first thought was, well, look, you got this huge planting bed here. It's like, what do you really need this for? This is just being maintained with a mower and spray pack or something. So what if this swale actually was narrowed and lengthened? It, potentially forms a privacy buffer for whatever development might happen on the other side of the parcel where it's upland, but it still retains the values and benefits. The key to, like I said on my last slide, the key is to figure out a way to maintain this thing. So absorbing it into our landscape and either the managed edge of the park or the managed part of a mobile park, if that's what it's going to be. But somebody needs to take that under their wing. We can get a lot more function out of it if it's sort of integrated into the environment there, the built environment as well as the natural environment.
Yeah, cool. Any other questions or thoughts? I will let you know that John Spees of Rogue River Watershed Council gave the City of Phoenix a bid for I think it was $2,500 a year. I'm not good with numbers either, so I could be wrong about, no, 25,000. Would it be 25? Anyway, he gave him, sorry, I'm not good at numbers. So 25,000, I think, to manage the, that wetland area for 2 years. But,
Wow.
No,
yes, there you are.
25,000 to restore it, 2,000, I think it was 2,000 a year to
That's what it
just
was.
maintain it.
That sounds about right.
That's what it
Yeah.
was.
That's
Okay.
kind of
Great.
in line with what we would consider, costs, general costs for it, depending on how much site work, planting and maintenance ended up happening. But the key would be to do that and to really try to reestablish a native plant community there and maintain it over time. That way we really get the true benefit of the place. And we don't just have a wetland feature, we actually have wetland function.
So it's getting to be 7:30, so I don't want to keep people, but happy for more conversation. So the last question, and both of you touched on this, is so what can we do specifically about this wetland or any wetlands? I mean, I think it sounds awesome fun to go out with Ryan and do ladders and whatever with fish. And I'm not a fish person. But what would you suggest? Write a letter to the paper, write a letter to the council, write a letter to the Urban Renewal Agency. What? Any
I would
thoughts?
say at least what I'm pushing right now is kind of that best management practices thing is to not just have the riparian setback essentially as the last place that you can do something for your new development. So I would encourage the councils, or write to your city council, write to your city planning, and just let them know that you are watching and you know that is the plan. A lot of times you'll have a lot of pushback from developers that, well, I'm going to lose one less parcel. We are in a housing shortage here, and so that's one of the things you're running up against. So, but I think there can be some kind of compromise with that, and have it a function or have it as a feature of the community as they're building.
Yeah.
So.
And if the economic impact to having a wetland, like you talked about, one of you talked about, it could be substantial for Phoenix, perhaps.
Yeah, I think we want to be clear that we want to retain as many wetlands as we can, and that we see value ecologically and to our community in keeping wetland habitats to the degree that we can. We're not anti-development, anti-housing. We're pro-environment and ecological services. So, just first of all, advocating through whatever avenue you have, letter writing, and there will be a process because this wetland won't be altered without some legal process that'll happen there, permitting process. So there'll be an opportunity, like you highlighted in the beginning, for public input. I think we want to say, yes, we want this wetland. We're open to changing it, to perhaps making it into something else that fits within this environment better, and allow some development potential. But we want to retain the wetland, and we want to retain the wetland functions, and we want to restore this wetland if we have an opportunity to work with this developer or the city to do that. That would be my take on it. Is like, let's not lose it, but it doesn't have to stay untouched either. There's things we can do that are going to make it better for everybody. So.
Yeah, great. I'm obviously hoping that we are hoping the development doesn't happen right on top of this wetland, but we all learned a lot today. So I want to thank you both for coming.
Yeah, thank you.